The evening air was cool, tinged with the scent of ocean mist and jasmine as I stepped out of my car. The grand facade of the Pacific View Hotel gleamed under golden sunset hues, the elegant structure overlooking the San Francisco Bay. It should have been breathtaking, something out of a fairy tale. Instead, my heart felt heavy, my breaths shallow with quiet apprehension. It wasn't my first family event, but it felt different this time. My brother Lucas was getting engaged to Sophie Hayes, beautiful, wealthy, from a family whose name regularly graced magazine covers. I loved my brother, in a way siblings often do despite their differences. But our bond had always been complicated, overshadowed by an unspoken competition, fueled by my mother's favoritism and my father's detached silence. Tonight, as always, I hoped things would be different. My lavender gown brushed softly against my ankles as I approached the ornate reception desk, decorated tastefully with delicate orchids and gilded trim. A hostess with a practiced, dazzling smile greeted me. "Name, please?" she asked pleasantly. "Isabella Carter," I replied quietly, already feeling out of place. Her perfectly painted smile wavered slightly as she thumbed quickly through her neatly organized list. Her brow furrowed just for an instant before the mask slid smoothly back into place. "Ah, here it is," she said, a little too brightly. "You'll be seated at Table E." "Where exactly is Table E?" I asked, glancing around the hall. The extravagant ballroom stretched wide, tables elegantly arranged beneath crystal chandeliers, each seat perfectly appointed. My parents' table stood proud at the center, near the head of the room, surrounded by dignitaries and prominent guests. She hesitated again, this time clearly uncomfortable. "It's, near the exit," she admitted softly, avoiding my eyes. "It might be quieter there." My stomach dropped. I felt my cheeks heat with embarrassment. "Are you sure?" I asked, hoping this was a simple misunderstanding. "I'm Lucas's sister." "Yes, Miss Carter," she said, eyes apologetic, but voice firm. "This seating chart was provided by your family directly." My family directly. Those words hit harder than the news itself. My pulse quickened as embarrassment gave way to hurt, but I forced a polite smile, thanked her softly, and turned away, clutching the small embossed place card tightly in my hand. Determined not to jump to conclusions, I walked briskly toward my parents. They stood near the center stage, my mother Vivian wearing a sleek silver gown, holding Lucas's arm like a trophy. My father Edward stood slightly apart, sipping champagne with distant eyes. "Mom?" I approached gently, hoping to find some explanation or comfort. "There's a misunderstanding with my seating." Vivian turned, briefly startled, before quickly recovering with practiced grace. "Isabella, not now," she whispered sharply, eyes darting nervously toward the Hayes family and their important guests. "It's important," I insisted quietly. "I've been seated at the exit table, away from the family." Her lips tightened into a thin, strained smile. "Isabella, tonight is about Lucas and Sophie. We had to prioritize seating for close family and critical guests. You understand, don't you?" I stared at her, my chest tightening. "I'm your daughter, Mom," I said softly, almost pleading. "Of course you are," she replied dismissively, waving a perfectly manicured hand. "But there's a hierarchy tonight. It's nothing personal." Her words echoed bitterly. Nothing personal. It felt deeply personal. Lucas turned slightly, overhearing, his smile broadening confidently. "Relax, Bella," he said patronizingly. "It's not that big a deal." I glanced toward my father, Edward, silently begging for support, but he avoided my gaze, staring down into his champagne flute. "Just let it go," he murmured, without looking up, taking another slow sip. My heart clenched tighter. I felt invisible, a ghost hovering at the edge of a family portrait I never truly belonged in. I forced myself to breathe, steadied my shaking hand, and turned away. Walking slowly, head held high despite the ache inside, I found my seat exactly where they'd placed me, by the heavy, rarely used exit door. A single table, slightly off-center, hidden in plain sight. a perfect metaphor for how my family had always seen me. I sank into my chair, the faint sound of laughter and clinking glasses distant and muffled behind the bustling guests. The tablecloth was pristine, the flower arrangement small but elegant, a polite afterthought. The elegant gold lettering on my place card seemed almost cruel in this setting. Isabella Carter, isolated and meaningless. For a moment, memories flooded me. Childhood birthdays when Lucas received extravagant gifts, while I unwrapped practical items. Family dinners where my successes were met with dismissive nods and his small achievements celebrated extravagantly. The memory that stung deepest was one I'd accidentally discovered years ago. A leather-bound journal Vivian kept, meticulously documenting Lucas's every milestone, achievement, and charming quirk. Page after page filled with him, while my existence never earned even a mention. Tonight's slight felt like the final confirmation. This wasn't about a seating mistake or an oversight. It was deliberate, another chapter in a story I'd always known, but refused to fully accept until now. The sound of approaching heels snapped me from my thoughts. Sophie's mother, Margaret Hayes, appeared before me, her presence elegant yet commanding. Her blue eyes, usually warm and pleasant, now held a sharp, inquisitive edge. "Isabella?" she asked softly, surprise and concern evident in her tone. "Why on earth are you seated here?" I forced a polite smile, trying to minimize my embarrassment. "Oh, just a mix-up," I murmured. "It's fine, really." Her expression remained skeptical, eyes narrowing slightly. "I don't believe in mix-ups at events this meticulously planned," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "Is everything all right?" The sincerity in her eyes unraveled something within me, breaking through the carefully constructed facade I'd maintained for years. "Honestly," I whispered, voice trembling slightly, "I don't think I've ever been truly all right in this family." Margaret's gaze softened instantly. She pulled out the chair next to me, gracefully sitting down, placing a comforting hand on mine. "Tell me," she urged gently. "I'm listening." Looking into her eyes, a wave of unexpected relief washed over me. Perhaps for the first time, someone truly saw me, not as a shadow, but as a person. I hesitated only briefly before words poured out. Tentative at first, then gaining strength. I recounted snippets of quiet exclusion, subtle insults disguised as jokes, and finally, tonight's brutal confirmation of my invisibility. She listened intently, nodding slowly, her brows knitted thoughtfully. "Thank you for trusting me with this," she finally said, squeezing my hand reassuringly. "There's something else you should know. I've been noticing strange behaviors in Lucas lately. Odd messages concerning comments. I fear Sophie might be headed into a situation she doesn't fully understand." Her voice lowered further, eyes glancing around carefully before continuing. "And frankly, I think you might have the missing piece to help unravel what's really going on here." My heart pounded, confusion mixing with intrigue and dread. I leaned forward slightly, my voice barely audible but firm. "Tell me everything." Margaret glanced once more toward the bustling reception, eyes narrowing with quiet resolve, before looking straight at me again. "I will," she promised, determination clear in her voice. "But first, Isabella, you have to understand something very important. You're not invisible. Not to me, and certainly not tonight." Margaret's words echoed quietly in my mind as I sat frozen, my fingers gripping the edge of the elegant linen tablecloth. The noise from the celebration inside felt distant now, muffled by the weight of the truths I had long avoided facing. Margaret leaned in closer, her voice lowered with a careful intensity. "Isabella, I need you to listen closely. Sophie has confided things that disturb me deeply. Lucas's behavior lately, his demands, manipulations, and especially the way he speaks to Sophie, are concerning. At first I thought it was wedding stress, but now I'm certain it's more than that." My heart quickened with an uneasy dread. Lucas had always been charming publicly, admired for his easygoing charisma. But privately, there had always been shadows, glimpses of entitlement and impatience I'd brushed aside, believing them to be isolated incidents. "What exactly has Sophie told you?" I asked cautiously. Margaret took a deep breath, her eyes troubled. "Lucas has been increasingly controlling. He's been pushing Sophie to sign documents that involve her inheritance, documents he claims are just formalities, but Sophie isn't so sure. And lately, she found conversations between him and a financial advisor that seemed off. She dismissed it initially, but it's weighing heavily on her." My pulse quickened. Lucas, ambitious and often praised for his strategic business sense, always knew exactly what he wanted and how to get it. But manipulation of someone as trusting as Sophie? "Have you seen the documents?" I pressed softly, suddenly feeling the enormity of the situation. Margaret hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Yes. They involve moving substantial assets into joint accounts, granting him significant control over her trust. Sophie's inheritance is large enough to drastically alter Lucas's financial status, and yours by extension." The realization hit me with startling clarity. Lucas had always strived for recognition, for status that matched his own perception of his worth. It had never occurred to me he might go to these lengths. "I don't understand," I whispered, confusion blending with disappointment. "Why hasn't Sophie confronted him directly?" Margaret sighed deeply, her voice tight with controlled anger. "Because she's afraid of what she'll find, afraid of causing a rift, afraid that it might all be true. And Lucas has made it clear that any hesitation on her part would mean she doesn't trust him." I stared at Margaret, my heart aching for Sophie, whose gentle spirit and kind heart had always stood in stark contrast to the manipulative world Lucas thrived in. I knew how it felt to be dismissed, manipulated, overshadowed. The thought of Sophie enduring that pain made me feel protective in a way I hadn't expected. "What can we do?" I asked, determination rising within me, quiet but fierce. "We can't just let Sophie walk blindly into this." Margaret nodded in agreement, her eyes steady and unwavering. "We won't. Tonight, during the celebration. We need to find evidence, something undeniable, something Lucas can't charm or explain away." The ballroom doors opened briefly, letting out bursts of laughter and applause as someone proposed a toast. I glanced toward the sound, my stomach tightening at the thought of confronting Lucas, of exposing the truth in front of everyone we knew. Margaret placed a comforting hand over mine, sensing my turmoil. "Isabella, I know how painful this must be, but you're stronger than you realize, and tonight your family needs that strength, even if they don't recognize it yet." I looked back at her, her quiet confidence lending me courage. "Then we start now," I said firmly. "What exactly do we need to find?" She reached into her clutch and discreetly handed me a small folded note. Sophie mentioned a document Lucas kept in his briefcase, something he brought tonight, believing no one would dare question him here. "We need to find it and confront him openly. It's the only way to ensure Sophie sees the truth and your family understands who Lucas truly is." I nodded, the weight of the moment settling heavily but resolutely upon me. "I'll find it," I promised, rising from my seat. Margaret squeezed my hand gently, her eyes full of faith and quiet strength. I stepped away from the hidden table, moving swiftly yet unobtrusively toward the main ballroom. My heart pounded, not from fear, but from resolve. Tonight, the shadows would finally be illuminated, and perhaps in their clarity, I would finally find my place. As I entered the bustling ballroom, lights twinkling above, laughter ringing hollowly around me, I saw Lucas's leather briefcase resting casually near the dais where he'd been standing earlier. I approached cautiously, my eyes scanning the crowd to ensure no one was watching. Quickly and quietly, I lifted the briefcase and slipped into a quiet corner of the room, partially concealed behind a towering floral arrangement. Taking a deep breath, I carefully opened the case, heart racing as I flipped through neatly organized papers and files. Finally, my fingers brushed against a crisp, official-looking document. My eyes widened as I scanned the contents, a meticulously outlined plan to transfer significant portions of Sophie's inheritance into accounts under Lucas's sole control, complete with notes outlining strategies for minimizing Sophie's awareness and managing potential legal complications. My breath caught in my throat. Margaret had been right. This was worse than I'd imagined. Suddenly, a familiar, chilling voice broke through my shock. "Looking for something, Isabella?" I spun around, heart hammering, to find Lucas standing mere feet away, his expression a cold mask, his eyes sharp with barely concealed anger. "Lucas," I stammered, clutching the document protectively, my voice steadying despite the adrenaline surging through me. "I didn't want to believe this of you, but you've left no doubt." He stepped closer, a threatening smile playing across his lips. "You should have stayed seated where we put you," he sneered quietly. "Always so desperate for attention." I met his gaze squarely, refusing to flinch. "This isn't about attention," I retorted firmly. "This is about right and wrong, and if protecting Sophie means exposing your true nature, so be it." His jaw tightened, eyes narrowing dangerously. "And who exactly do you think will believe you? The invisible daughter, desperate and overshadowed by her brother? They'll think you're spiteful, jealous, unworthy." A calm strength filled me, surprising even myself. "They might," I admitted, voice steady. "But evidence doesn't lie, Lucas. And tonight, everyone will finally see who you truly are." His confidence faltered for a brief second, replaced by flickering uncertainty. It was a fleeting moment, but enough to reinforce my resolve. As guests gathered nearby, drawn by the subtle but palpable tension, I lifted the document clearly, making sure it was visible. "It's over, Lucas," I said firmly, each word carrying across the hushed crowd that had begun to form. "No more lies, no more hiding. Tonight, the truth speaks louder than your charm." Lucas stood frozen, anger, shock, and panic flickering across his face. For the first time, perhaps ever, the spotlight wasn't his to control. It was mine, and I would use it to finally reclaim my voice, my dignity, and my rightful place, visible to everyone at last. The silence that followed my declaration stretched painfully, each second amplifying the charged atmosphere. Lucas stood frozen, his confident facade now cracking visibly under the intense scrutiny of the guests gathered around us. Their murmurs grew louder, a sea of confused whispers swelling into a tidal wave of speculation. "What's going on here?" My father's voice cut sharply through the escalating noise, his authority commanding instant quiet. He pushed through the crowd, his face a mixture of irritation and confusion, eyes flickering between Lucas and me. I held up the documents firmly, my voice clear and steady despite the adrenaline rushing through my veins. "Lucas has been manipulating Sophie's inheritance behind everyone's back. These documents show his plans to move significant assets into his control without her clear consent. He intended to deceive her, to deceive us all." My father looked from me to Lucas, disbelief battling growing fury in his eyes. "Lucas, what is this?" Lucas quickly attempted to regain his composure, straightening his posture and forcing a casual smile. "This is all a misunderstanding, Dad. Isabella's just trying to cause drama, like always." "No," I interrupted, stepping forward decisively. "This isn't a misunderstanding. This is proof." I thrust the documents toward my father, daring him to see the truth with his own eyes. The guests around us shifted uncomfortably, aware they were witnessing an intimate family crisis unfolding before them. My father took the papers, his hands trembling slightly as he read. His face grew paler with each passing second, realization and horror dawning visibly on his features. Finally, he looked up at Lucas, betrayal etched deeply into his expression. "You would do this to Sophie? To your own family?" he whispered, voice heavy with disbelief. Lucas's confident facade crumbled further, replaced with a look of desperation as he realized the tide was rapidly turning against him. "Dad, please, you know I would never hurt Sophie. This was for her." "For her?" My voice rose sharply, cutting through his lies with icy clarity. This was about you, Lucas, about control and greed. You used Sophie's trust against her, manipulating her feelings, exploiting her kindness, and you nearly succeeded because no one wanted to see who you really are. Lucas's face twisted with anger, the charming mask discarded entirely now. And who are you to judge me, Isabella? Always lurking in the shadows, never truly belonging. You've spent your life jealous of the attention Sophie and I got. Don't pretend this is anything but your moment to finally step into the spotlight. A tense silence fell over the room. His words stung, but this time they couldn't wound me. I had faced far worse from him and from myself in the years of quiet endurance. This was no longer about jealousy or validation. This was about justice and dignity. "Sophie!" I called out, turning to face my younger sister, who stood pale and trembling at the edge of the gathering crowd. Her eyes were wide, swimming with confusion and fear. "You deserve the truth more than anyone else. Don't take my word for it. Read the documents." Sophie hesitated for a moment, then stepped forward, carefully taking the papers from our father. As she read, her delicate features twisted with anguish, tears spilling silently down her cheeks. "Lucas, is this true?" Her voice shook with heartbreak. "Were you really planning all this behind my back?" Lucas stepped toward her desperately, reaching out as if to touch her. "Sophie, you know how much I love you. This is being twisted out of context." "Stop!" Sophie's voice suddenly thundered, shocking us all. It was stronger, clearer, and more forceful than I'd ever heard from her before. She stepped back, clutching the papers protectively against her chest. "Don't lie to me anymore. I've let you control too much for too long. This," she gestured at the documents, "this is too far. I trusted you." Lucas faltered, visibly shrinking under Sophie's accusation. Around us, guests whispered urgently, the scandal of the night unfolding vividly before their eyes. My mother pushed through the crowd, her usually poised demeanor shattered. "Lucas!" she gasped, eyes wide with horror. "What have you done?" He turned desperately to her, panic radiating from every pore. "Mom, please, you know me." "Do I?" She shook her head sadly, disappointment heavy in every line of her face. "I thought I did." The room felt oppressive now, filled with silent judgment, the weight of betrayal palpable in the air. Lucas's eyes darted around, searching for allies but finding none. Finally, he turned his fury back to me, voice trembling with barely contained rage. "You couldn't let it go, could you, Isabella?" His words dripped venom. "You had to destroy everything because you can't stand to see me happy." My response was calm, clear, unwavering. "Your happiness was built on deception, Lucas. Real happiness doesn't destroy others. It doesn't require manipulation or control. It's something you still don't understand." Lucas's jaw tightened, his fists clenched at his sides. For a moment it seemed he might lash out, but the quiet presence of our father and the firm stance of the crowd around us restrained him. He took a step back, bitterness evident in every move. "This isn't over," he spat harshly, retreating slowly toward the exit. "You'll regret this." "No," I replied, my voice echoing firmly in the silence. "The only regret here is yours. You had a chance to be a brother, a husband, and a son, but you chose greed instead." He paused at the doorway, looking back one final time, his eyes meeting mine with cold fury. "You think you've won tonight, Isabella? You haven't. You'll always be invisible." As the doors closed behind him, silence enveloped us once more, thick and oppressive. I took a deep breath, steadying myself, and turned to Sophie. She looked at me with gratitude mixed with heartbreak, stepping forward to embrace me tightly. "Thank you, Isabella," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I didn't want to believe it, but I needed someone brave enough to face it. And you did." I hugged her tightly, a quiet strength filling me. "We'll get through this together," I promised softly. "You're not alone." Our father stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. For the first time, his eyes met mine with genuine respect and appreciation. "Isabella, I'm sorry we didn't see what was right in front of us. You deserved better from all of us." My mother nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "You've always been our strength, quietly carrying more than your share. No more. We see you clearly now." Around us, guests slowly began to disperse, offering quiet words of support and comfort. The room, once filled with superficial laughter and hollow praise, now echoed with genuine warmth and understanding. As I stood there, Sophie and my parents beside me, clarity washed over me, more profound and comforting than I ever imagined. Tonight hadn't just revealed Lucas's deception. It had revealed my true strength. For the first time, standing visibly in the heart of my family, I felt seen, respected, and undeniably real. The shadows that had defined me had been shattered, and now, bathed in the light of truth and authenticity, I could finally see my place clearly, and it was powerful. The days following the confrontation passed slowly, each moment marked by a quiet, reflective tension. News of Lucas's betrayal spread quickly through our social circles, igniting a mixture of outrage, disbelief, and sympathy. My phone buzzed incessantly with messages of support, disbelief, and curiosity. Yet, amidst the chaos, I felt an unfamiliar tranquility, as if the storm that had ravaged our family had somehow cleared the path forward. Sophie, although shaken deeply by the truth, began to show surprising resilience. She came to stay with me in my apartment, a small, comfortable space that now felt like a haven. We spent long evenings on my couch, sipping hot tea and sharing stories we'd never dared to speak openly before. "I can't believe how blind I was," Sophie whispered one evening, curled up beside me. Her eyes, usually sparkling with innocence, now held a wiser, if somewhat sadder, glow. "I trusted Lucas completely. How could I not see what he was doing?" I gently squeezed her shoulder. "You saw what he allowed you to see, Sophie. Manipulators like Lucas are skilled at crafting illusions. But now you know better, and that makes you stronger." She nodded slowly, determination flickering in her gaze. "I don't want to feel weak ever again. I want to be like you, strong, brave, someone who sees clearly." Her words touched me deeply, and I realized how much Sophie had grown through this turmoil. "You're already stronger than you realize," I assured her, meaning every word. "Strength comes from facing difficult truths, not from hiding behind comforting lies." Meanwhile, our parents took definitive steps to distance themselves from Lucas, both personally and professionally. My father immediately began an internal audit of all family businesses to undo any manipulative arrangements Lucas had created. My mother, initially devastated by Lucas's betrayal, redirected her energy into repairing the emotional damage caused by years of unintentional favoritism. One evening, my father invited me to dinner at their house, an unusual gesture considering our typically formal interactions. I accepted with cautious optimism, arriving to find him seated quietly at the dining table, his eyes unusually contemplative. "Isabella," he began quietly, meeting my eyes directly, "I've been reflecting on the past. Your bravery at the party, it opened my eyes to how deeply we've wronged you. I realize now that I overlooked you, not just in Lucas's schemes, but throughout your life." I felt my throat tighten at his honest vulnerability. "Dad, I didn't do this for validation," I replied gently, my voice steady but compassionate. "I just wanted the truth to be known." He nodded slowly, a small, humble smile touching his lips. "And that's exactly why you deserve recognition. You sought truth, not applause. I admire that deeply. I should have seen it much sooner." Tears pricked the corners of my eyes, but they were tears of relief, of acknowledgement, rather than pain. "Thank you, Dad," I whispered softly, finally feeling seen in a way I'd never thought possible. The healing was slow but deliberate. Over the weeks, the tension that had long defined our family interactions began to fade. Lucas attempted several times to reconcile, his pleas tinged with desperation. But my parents remained firm, recognizing that true reconciliation could only come from genuine remorse and change, qualities Lucas still lacked. Despite the emotional upheaval, or perhaps because of it, my relationship with Sophie blossomed beautifully. We leaned on each other, discovering a friendship built not on shared grievances, but on mutual respect and genuine affection. Our late-night conversations evolved from discussions of past hurts into dreams of the future, each of us inspiring the other to reach for new, ambitious goals. One quiet afternoon, Sophie and I visited the family's lakeside property, an old, cherished retreat that held countless childhood memories. We walked along the shore, the soft rustle of leaves overhead providing a soothing backdrop to our conversation. "I've decided to return to school," Sophie announced suddenly, her voice firm with newfound confidence. "I want to study psychology. I want to understand people better, understand myself better, and help others avoid the traps I fell into." I smiled warmly, proud and supportive. "That's incredible, Sophie. I have no doubt you'll excel." "And you?" she asked, nudging me playfully. "What's your next big move, Isabella?" I gazed out across the calm water, the gentle ripples reflecting the sky above. "I'm going to focus on my career and finally pursue that partnership at the firm. But more than that, I want to live openly and truthfully, never invisible again." Sophie reached out, squeezing my hand tightly. "You never were invisible to me, Bella. You've always been my hero." Her words warmed me deeply, a quiet affirmation that resonated through every part of my being. "We'll be each other's heroes from now on," I promised sincerely. As the sun set, casting brilliant hues of orange and purple across the lake, I felt a profound sense of peace. The storm had passed, leaving behind clarity, authenticity, and the powerful, undeniable strength of true family bonds. For the first time in my life, I was no longer defined by shadows or quiet endurance. I was visible, acknowledged, and most importantly, I had emerged stronger, not in spite of the pain, but because I had embraced the truth fully, without hesitation. Together, Sophie and I turned back toward the cabin, laughter ringing lightly through the crisp air, each step forward a confident stride into our beautifully uncertain yet decidedly hopeful future. The weeks gradually turned into months, each day moving us further away from the turmoil that had defined so much of our lives. After the confrontation, Lucas had all but vanished from our lives, his presence reduced to occasional whispers among distant acquaintances. Our parents had grown visibly stronger and more unified, committed to healing the rifts his manipulations had created. Sophie and I, meanwhile, stepped boldly into a new era of mutual support, independence, and genuine closeness. My work at the law firm intensified, but it brought with it a sense of achievement and purpose I hadn't fully experienced before. Without the weight of family drama constantly looming over me, my professional growth became steady and rewarding. Colleagues who once viewed me with reserved respect now openly sought my opinions and celebrated my insights. The partnership I once cautiously aspired to was no longer a distant dream, but a tangible goal within reach. One crisp autumn evening, Sophie came home to the apartment, eyes sparkling with excitement, carrying an acceptance letter from the prestigious psychology program she'd applied to months earlier. "Bella!" she shouted joyfully, waving the letter in the air as she burst through the door. "I got in!" I leaped up from the sofa, enveloping her in a tight hug. "I knew you could do it, Sophie. I'm so incredibly proud of you." We both laughed, the sound bright and genuine, filling our modest living room with warmth. Sophie's triumph was more than just academic. It was a symbol of her strength, resilience, and the self-confidence she had rebuilt from scratch. That weekend, our parents hosted a small celebration dinner to honor Sophie's accomplishment. The atmosphere at their house had transformed significantly since our previous tensions. Mom had taken care to decorate the dining room with Sophie's favorite colors, and Dad proudly toasted his younger daughter, his eyes glistening with genuine affection. "To Sophie," Dad began, raising his glass, "whose journey has shown all of us the power of courage, honesty, and growth. You've taught us the true meaning of strength." I smiled broadly, clinking my glass gently with Sophie's. Our parents' newfound awareness and sincere appreciation for both of us filled me with a deep sense of satisfaction. There were no more shadows, no more hidden resentments, just a clear path toward mutual respect and understanding. As dinner continued, our conversations turned reflective, touching on past hurts without the sting of bitterness, openly acknowledging our individual roles in the painful chapters we'd endured. "Isabella," Mom began quietly, her voice carrying an unusual softness, "I want you to know how much I regret the years you felt unseen. I took your strength for granted, assuming it meant you needed less support. Now I see how wrong I was. You deserved so much more." Her words were sincere, and for the first time I saw real remorse in her eyes. "Thank you, Mom," I responded softly, squeezing her hand gently. "I've learned to see that strength isn't about never needing help. It's about being brave enough to ask for it." Our bond, once strained and complex, had finally begun to heal through honesty and vulnerability. I realized then that real family connections aren't forged by avoiding pain, but by facing it together and emerging stronger. One afternoon, while Sophie and I packed her belongings in preparation for her move closer to her new campus, we stumbled upon an old photo album hidden beneath piles of clothes. Curiously, we flipped through its pages, memories of simpler, innocent times flooding back. "Look at us," Sophie laughed gently, pointing to a photo of us as children, covered head to toe in paint from a messy art project. "Who knew we'd end up here?" I smiled nostalgically, tracing our young faces with my fingertips. "Life definitely didn't follow the script we imagined. But honestly, Sophie, I wouldn't change it." She looked up thoughtfully. "Really? Even after everything we've gone through?" "Especially after everything," I affirmed sincerely. "Those experiences taught us how to be resilient and to truly value ourselves and each other." On Sophie's moving day, the atmosphere was bittersweet. We loaded her belongings into the car, pausing often to laugh, hug, or simply savor these final moments of living together. "Promise me we'll never lose this closeness," Sophie said, her eyes glistening with tears. I hugged her tightly, my voice firm yet gentle. "I promise. Distance will never weaken our bond. If anything, it will only make it stronger." After saying goodbye, I returned to the apartment alone, a quiet emptiness settling around me. Yet beneath that emptiness was a comforting sense of accomplishment. We'd both grown immensely, finding ourselves and each other amidst adversity. In the following days, my apartment felt different, quieter. Yet this solitude allowed space for reflection and deepened my commitment to self-growth. I began investing more in my personal interests, joining community initiatives and rediscovering hobbies I had long abandoned. Through these new experiences, I met people who quickly became dear friends, reminding me that family isn't solely defined by blood, but by the bonds we choose and nurture. Months later, Sophie returned for a brief visit, her confidence evident in her stride, her expression bright and determined. We spent hours sharing stories of her university experiences, my career advancements, and our evolving lives. "I finally feel like myself, Bella," Sophie said, her voice serene, "and I owe so much of that to you." "You owe it to yourself," I corrected her warmly. "You did the hard work, Sophie. You chose truth and authenticity over comfort. That's courage." Late that evening, as Sophie slept soundly in the guest room, I sat on my balcony under the stars, reflecting on our journey. I realized how far we'd come, how each painful moment had shaped us into stronger, wiser individuals. And though the scars of the past remained, they no longer held power over us. Instead, they stood as gentle reminders of our resilience. I felt deeply grateful, not just for the clarity that painful experiences brought, but also for the freedom to embrace who we truly were. This newfound independence was not a rejection of family, but rather an affirmation of the genuine bonds we had worked so diligently to cultivate. Looking up at the clear night sky, I breathed deeply, a profound peace settling over me. I was no longer invisible, no longer hiding or quietly enduring. I had stepped fully into my own light, confidently embracing the future. As I closed my eyes, savoring the quiet night, I whispered a silent promise. No matter where life takes me, I will always honor my truth and fiercely protect the freedom I've fought so hard to achieve. With that promise deeply engraved in my heart, I knew with unwavering certainty that no challenge could ever overshadow my strength again. From now on, my life would be defined by authenticity, courage, and the relentless pursuit of genuine happiness. The years have gently unfolded since that pivotal autumn, each season bringing its own quiet lessons and subtle joys. Life settled into a harmonious rhythm, defined not by past pains, but by the strength and clarity we'd gained from confronting them. The scars of yesterday faded into gentle reminders of the resilience and courage that shaped our newfound freedom. Sophie flourished in her psychology program, graduating with honors and quickly establishing herself as a compassionate therapist, beloved by clients who recognized the empathy rooted deeply in her own transformative experiences. Our bond, once tested by turmoil, had blossomed into an unwavering friendship, sustained by mutual respect, trust, and open-hearted communication. Professionally, my journey took remarkable strides. The partnership I'd once dreamed of became reality, bringing not only career satisfaction, but also the responsibility to mentor young lawyers navigating their own complex paths. Each day, I endeavored to instill the importance of integrity, resilience, and self-respect, lessons I'd earned through my own trials. Family dynamics transformed profoundly. Our parents maintained their commitment to change, their love now marked by sincerity, humility, and active engagement in our lives. Holiday gatherings, once fraught with tension, evolved into warm, meaningful occasions filled with laughter, genuine conversations, and a collective appreciation for the honesty and authenticity we'd cultivated together. Lucas remained distant, his absence a quiet acknowledgement of boundaries set clearly and firmly. Yet his story, while no longer entwined with ours, served as a lasting reminder that true familial bonds are built upon trust and mutual respect, rather than mere biological ties. One serene evening, as twilight gently painted the sky with shades of lavender and gold, Sophie and I sat on the porch of our childhood home, watching our parents tend to the garden, their laughter mingling softly with the rustling leaves. "We've really come full circle, haven't we?" Sophie murmured, a peaceful smile gracing her lips. "We have," I agreed, my heart filled with quiet gratitude. "But it's not just a circle. It's a spiral, rising higher with each turn, bringing us closer to the best versions of ourselves." Sophie turned to me, her expression thoughtful. "Do you ever wonder how different our lives would be if things hadn't happened the way they did?" I considered her question, my gaze lingering on the peaceful scene before us. Honestly, I wouldn't change a thing. Every challenge taught us invaluable lessons about strength, forgiveness, and authenticity. Those experiences shaped us, Sophie. They taught us how to truly value ourselves and each other. We sat in comfortable silence, savoring the gentle harmony of the moment, the air around us soft with evening's embrace. Looking out at our parents who had learned to love us with genuine appreciation, I realized this was the true essence of family, a sanctuary of acceptance, growth, and enduring respect. Later that night, as I lay beneath the comforting darkness, I whispered a heartfelt gratitude to the universe, not merely for the peace we'd found, but for every difficult step along the way. Each hardship had been necessary, guiding us toward clarity and strength we might never have known otherwise. In the stillness, I made one final promise: to honor the truth of my journey, embrace the courage to continue growing, and cherish the profound peace we've built, never forgetting the hard-earned wisdom that brought us here. With that quiet resolve, sleep enveloped me gently, carrying dreams filled with hope and endless possibilities, secure in the knowledge that our hardest battles had forged our most beautiful victories.